Hey, Peter Gregg, Miami, Florida. Welcome to the Christmas Room.
Sit back, relax. You are about to watch a Peter Gregg video. Something warm, human, and wonderful happens when you watch Peter Gregg.
What I want to know is the 1.2 crop a deal breaker? Is it maybe an inconvenience? Is it a little inconvenience, or is it a big inconvenience? All right, well, let's find out. This is not going to be too long of a video. On the A9 right now, and the reason I got the A9 is because the focus system is similar in nature to the A7 III, the A73. Let's call it an A73. So I have a Canon 50mm L with the Sigma MC11 adapter on the camera now. So what's the reason that I did that is I wanted to show you what a 50mm looks like in 24p, because we're recording 24p even though the timeline is going to be a 30p. So if you see it a little bit choppy, that's why. But I can't show it to you otherwise, the difference. So let's say you're going to get the A7 III, the A73. I want to call it the A73. And you want to save a little bit of money. So you need a 50mm because you want the compression and you want the blown out background, which I can't say that I blame you. So what they have from Sony is a Zeiss 55mm 1.8. So the lens is on the camera right now. What do I have it set at? It's the 50mm Canon L, which means it's a 1.2, but I don't have it set to 1.2. I have it set to f1.8 because this lens is an f1.8. Now this lens goes on the Sony body very nicely because Sony is making a really strong effort to make their bodies smaller, because in the minds of many people, mirrorless equals smaller, all right? And I can understand that, honestly, because that's one of the ways to shrink down a camera. However, I think, in my opinion, and this is a personal opinion, because other people have the complete opposite. As a matter of fact, I will say something in favor of the Sony size after I say something against it, all right? This GH, what is this, the 5 or the 4? This is the GH4. The GH5 is the same size, basically. Is just about the right size camera. So it looks like, you know, people are, not people, but camera companies are aiming towards smaller and smaller. So what happens is when you have a big lens to put on there, like this 50mm 1.4 on a small body, it looks very awkward. It kind of looks like if I put this on here. It's kind of like a weird balance. Even holding the A7 IX is weird. Now, just so you know, the A7 IX from Sony, the A7R III from Sony, and the new coming out or is out in parts of the world, A7 III from Sony, are basically the same body. There's a few different changes. The A9 has an extra dial on top so you can control a few things. The A7R III has a lock on the button where the PSAM button, to the mode button, and you have to hold it down to turn it. Whereas something like the GH4 and the GH5, if you push the button down, you can't turn this, but it'll pop up and it freely will turn. All right, so the A7 III doesn't give you that option. You actually have to hold it for it to turn. I don't like that. I like the Panasonic implementation the best. I have a choice: push it down for it to be locked all the time, or release it for it to be unlocked all the time. So that's on the A7 III. R3, okay? The A7 III, which I don't have, it's not out in the United States yet, it's coming, does not have that pop-up button. So the lock is not on that dial. So that's basically the biggest amount of differences in actually looking at the bodies between the three cameras. The extra dials on the A9, the locker on the permanently locked dial on the PSAM, the mode dial on the A7R III, and on the A73 you get none of those. So I like the A73 in theory, the best. I haven't held the camera yet, so I'm always reserving that last little ounce of opinion until I actually have the camera in hand. So with Easter and Passover and them being closed, and I ordered mine from B&H, it probably won't be till next week when the cameras get shipped, and that's even if I'm in that first shipment, because I understand that the A7 IIIs, the A73 is actually really being sold. So back to what we're doing in this video. I'm going to put this lens. Now the lens that's the 50mm lens from Sony is $1,400, $1,400 for a 50mm 1.4. What's the purpose of that lens? Why would I be aiming for that lens? The reason that I'd be aiming for that lens is because I want to do compression of a lens, and in combination with the f-stop, I want to get a beautifully blurred out image in the back. All right, now I'm not going to talk much about compression, but compression also adds to the blurred out background and the way or the size that the background appears in your background. So the bigger the millimeters, the more compressed, and the more compressed, the more flattering. That's the general rule. So let's say a 25mm f1.2 on the Panasonic GH4, GH5, even though it's a 1.2, it's going to give me some blurred background, but a 25mm lens is a 25mm lens is a 25mm lens, no matter how you crop it. It doesn't change the physical aspects of the lens. So it does not have the same compression that a 50mm lens has. So Sony, in their way to reduce the size to go with their much smaller bodies, they came out with a second 50mm lens, except the second 50mm lens is not 50mm, it's 55. So they add 5 more millimeters. So that kind of like, if you're in a tight space, like I'm in an inside room. So if you're in an inside room in a living room, how big is the room? If you're in a second room in your house where you're using it kind of like as a make-do studio, or you've got your tripod in the kitchen and you're looking over the dining room table, which has the living room as the background, you still have a limited amount of feet. So that camera is against the back wall, which you can't see, all right? But right where the camera is the wall. That Christmas tree is against that wall. And the difference between there to there is 24 to 25 feet. So that's a pretty good sized room. Not too many people have a room that large. However, if you go multi-room, like you put the tripod in the kitchen and you look through the pass-through counter and you sit in the dining room, and then the people never know, you know, that that's your setup. But it's also inconvenient if you have kids, or if you've got friends, or you've got family. You know, you've got to be able to record when there's not going to be traffic. Otherwise, it's going to mess up your video. All right, so the big question here is the 55mm. I'm going to look at how much is in the background. Now, I didn't crop this because normally on the 50mm I have been cropping to taste. I don't like all the air up above my head, and I like to crop between the Santa Claus on this side and the grandfather's clock on that side. But this time I left the 50mm in 24p. Now the reason I picked 24p is because I'm going to show you what the difference is when you go from 24p to 30p. This is something a lot of people don't talk about. It's not much of a crop. It's very, very little, okay? So let's say you want to save a little bit of money, like $500, and get the 50mm 1.8, 55mm 1.8 for $900, instead of spending $1,400 or $1,500 on the 50mm 1.4. So what kind of a handicap is that going to give you in terms of space? All right, let's stop this. Let's switch it over to 30p, which is going to be the native timeline for this video, and put the lower price lens. Even though it's a lower price lens, it's still a really, really good lens. It's a Zeiss tagged lens. and the optics are very good. It doesn't go down to 1. The way they kept it small, it doesn't go down to 1.4, it goes down to 1.8. And the other way they kept it smaller is instead of 50 millimeters, it's 55. So all these little things are little by little, just inch by inch, handicapping us. Now, the question is, does it matter to you or it doesn't? Because if it doesn't, then you don't have to worry about this. But when I change to this to get something similar, I'm already hitting the back wall. So now I'm thinking, I'm going to have to do something about this. All right. So let's switch to the Sony lens, the Zeiss 55 millimeter 1.8. Now get a good look now, because as soon as I change the lens, I want you to compare the difference of what we are doing here, even where the table is, because I got a feeling, actually I know, I'm going to have to pull the table back a little bit because I have it in line with the edge of a door there. That's my marker. I know I'm going to have to pull it back to the middle of the door. So let's do that. Let's go change the lens. I'll be right back. Okay, through the magic of editing, you didn't have to watch me walk all the way to the camera, wait while I change lens, put the other lens on, take this lens off. So now we've changed two things. I've changed to the Sony native lens, the 55 millimeter 1.8, and I've changed from 24p to 30p. That's what 30p looks like. I don't know what that was about, all right? The 30p. And this is the lens that I took off. So the 50 millimeter lens is the Canon 50 millimeter lens. And now we also have autofocus operating, which is also face detection, which is one of the reasons that this camera is very likable. And this is the MC11 adapter from Sigma. Now, from pictures, or for pictures, the combination of the 50 millimeter L lens and pretty much, yeah, just about every lens from Canon that I've had, the Canon mount that I put on the MC11 for pictures, not video, works very well. I don't have a problem with it at all. When I switch to movies, it works really poor. I have a 100% problem. But now with this, you noticed, we have the 1.2 crop in effect, and we also have the 55 millimeter, so we lost 5 millimeters, which is not that great. But instead of tilted for us, instead of being a 45 millimeter, they went the other way to 55. But in this mode and with this lens, I have the advantage of having full-time Sony autofocus, which in my opinion is kind of comparable to the Canon dual pixel focus. I have a Canon 80D right here, okay, and with the dual pixel focus on this camera, I can tap and I can track. I could do that on the Sony. So I'm doing a few test shots with this flash unit. That's why this is sitting over here like this. Okay, that's hey, you want a commercial for one of my products? This is a Better Bounce card. This is the flash diffuser that I invented in 2003, 2004, and I've been selling ever since then. And it's the best one. I'm sorry, that's the way I feel about it. That's why I invented it, not to sell flash diffusers. It's what I needed. But I'm not using the phone, because if I use the phone, it actually will kill my face detection. And I do want face detection, because I'm going to go over to say hello to Jingles, who very much looks like he's kind of knocked out. So again, we're watching this on the Sony A9. And even though it sounds like it's probably not fair to be doing it on the A9, the focus systems are very similar. I've read where it's the same focus system, and I've read where there's a few different things. Regardless, the focus systems on the A73 and the A9 is basically the same foundation. So I expect it to do the same. So this gives me the freedom to walk away from the desk, to be myself and come out here and say hallelujah and turn around and sit down, and I can actually tell you a story. Once upon a time in a land far, far away. Okay, so this focus system allows me to pretty confidently, it's not perfect, it's got its own problems. And I'll tell you one of the problems that no one has even talked about. I think I've seen one person comment on it, and that's been it. And that is something called focus breathing. Focus breathing is hard to see, but it's there. On the Sony camera system, including on the A9, if I step back and I step forward, all right, find yourself a marker on the one side and mark it with your eyes. Now watch how the picture itself gets bigger and smaller as I move, and it follows focus with me. So I'll come here and I'll sit down, and it followed focus with me, and the picture is actually a different size now. It expands and contracts, and that is focus breathing. And when I come up here, the picture is again getting bigger or smaller. Now, unless I actually point it out to you, you would not have noticed it. But if I scrub, you know what that means? If I say I scrubbed, that means I took the playhead in the NLE, or the software in the computer, and I moved it back and forth quickly. I could see the picture pulsing like this, okay? Does that happen on the Canon, on the 80D? Well, I had never noticed before until I noticed it on the Sony. So I tried doing some video with the dual pixel focus on the 80D, and I scrubbed, and the picture does not change size. So there's no focus breathing on the Canon compared to the Sony. So, but that isn't the point. It's not going to deter you. If I didn't mention it, you wouldn't have noticed it. Maybe 1 out of 10,000 people would have noticed it. And then 1 out of 1,000 of the people that did notice it, which is very few, would have actually commented on it. So it's not a major issue. The bigger issue is I can't move the walls. I cannot come over and knock out that wall and move the tree farther back, or whatever background that you're going to be using. Because if you're going to go full frame and you want 4K, Sony is the only game in town at the moment with a focus system that's going to be face detection and full frame. So that is kind of like my highest priority. So the Canons have been beautiful, but they only go to 1080, and the 1080 that they do give you is not that good. So if I do put the 50mm lens on the Sony A9, or any of the three, the triplets, you know, the A7S, 2, which is supposed to come out with the A7 III, the A7R, the 3, the A9, and the new A73. So if you're going to do manual focusing, that gives you a few other options. What's the biggest sensor you can get if you do manual focusing? Well, you've got Micro Four Thirds, but you could step it up from Micro Four Thirds and go to something like the 5D Mark IV, but that takes it from a 2x, which this is the crop factor here, to a 174 on the 5D Mark IV. So you see what I mean when I say it's the only game in town is the Sony, if you want full frame. So if you don't need full frame, then boom, bam, done. The GH5 and the GH series is basically the best camera. Sony is a good computer that takes pictures, because it's more computer. It isn't for nothing that you hear so many people go like, the menus on here are terrible. Well, they're not really terrible. They're very hard to get used to. They're not logical, and things are buried inside of other things. So if you have 2 months with the camera and you get to know it intimately, you're going to go, hey, what's the problem with the menus? There's no problem for me. But a lot of people do have that shell shock of moving over from one camera system to the Sony, and I would be included in that because I use the Canon system. I'm very heavily into the Nikon system, which is doing nothing with video at all. And then Panasonic has risen to the top. I think it's the best camera that you can get. And even with that, I'm going with the full frame abilities of an A7 III at $2,000, and we can't throw that out, you know, as if it's like nothing. Is, you know, if it's nothing for you to spend $2,000 or $4,500 and get the A9, or $3,200 and get the A7R III, if you want more megapixels, but you lose how many focus points there are, because there's 693 on the $4,500 camera that I'm using now, and there's 300 and something, and even much less, depending on if you're looking at contrast or phase detection, on the $3,300 camera. But take it down to the $2,000 camera, and whoa, what are they doing? They put all the focus points and basically most of the guts of the focus system of this $4,500 camera, whoosh, right into the A7 III. So the A7 III becomes a bargain. But you need to get that one little gotcha understood. I'm not labeling it as good or bad at the moment. I'm just labeling it in a way where you can understand this is what the picture is going to look like at 30p. So let's change the lens one more time. Let's leave it at 30p. And let's put the 50mm on and just kind of show the difference between 55 and 50. And you're going to see it's not that much difference. But since we've gone this far, we might as well take it all the way down. So you go, okay, I'll spend the extra money on the 50mm from Sony with the full focus capabilities. Let's see what it looks like. Well, I don't have that lens, but this is a 50mm L lens from Canon. They should be comparable in 50mm being 50mm, but that's not always exact either. But let's change from the 55 to a 50, and we'll lose the autofocus. I won't be able to walk around like I can now. Another cool thing I love about the autofocus, I can do this. and it'll focus right on that. That's a Canon 80D, in case you never saw what one looked like, and then it's back to me. All right, so let's put this on. Now you're going to see the difference, still staying at 30p, if you actually buy the more expensive Sony version of a 50mm 1.4 lens. All right, so let's change it. I'll be right back again. All right, I'm back. I focused on this target because now with the 50mm Canon lens, I can't use automatic focus in the camera because it really is very poor with the Metabones. So even though I have a lav mic on, which is right here, just on me to make sure it's on, otherwise there's no sound in this whole video. I have a lav mic on here. I'm free to walk around, and if I come over here, you're kind of going to say, Peter, I'm getting dizzy, you're out of focus. That's okay. We are at, actually I do need to check that. Okay, I checked. I wanted to make sure I was at f1.8. So this way all the lenses in this entire test is at f1.8. So that just occurred to me because I just changed the lens again. So, oh, I left the Zeiss over there. So the Zeiss lens is quite small. Let me grab it since the focus is not going to change. And just grab the lens, and it's very small. You know, I don't think you'd call a lens cute, but this goes with that body, the A9, the A7 III that's coming out in the US. Those of you that do have it, you know, in Europe, you'll actually enjoy this lens because it's very sharp. It's the Zeiss 1.8 lens. You know, I'm going to put all the stuff that I've been talking about on my own page on B&H. B&H gave me a page, baby. And all you got to do is click on that, and anything that I used in this video, including the mic, everything except him, hey, will be available on that page. So you can go read about it. And one of the secrets to using the B&H page is you can read comments, because you're getting my comment, period, here. So there's other people, and some of them are dumb, okay? But some of them will give you something very interesting to read. So all the equipment that's on there, you read comments. And then anything that you do buy, no matter what it is, from B&H, I will get a finder's fee. It doesn't cost you anything. It just helps bring some money into the channel so that I can buy cameras and stuff. So I appreciate that. So this is what the 50mm looks like. Not much of a difference, right? I didn't see that much of a difference between the 55 and the 50 that's on there now. However, if I was going to spend $900 or $950, I don't remember how much the Zeiss is, I would like to find the 50mm Zeiss lens, the Sony lens, on sale. because I'll get a 1.4 lens, because that's the point why I'm even moving to full frame, is because I do want my backgrounds blurred out. Now, all right, Peter Gregg, thank you for being with me today. I will catch you later. Peter Gregg, Miami, Florida. Bye-bye. Whoosh.
You have just watched another Peter Gregg video. Something warm, human, and wonderful happens when you watch Peter Gregg. Thank you for watching. Description of all equipment used in this video, plus any notes Peter took while filming, are always placed in the description box, show more box, or down arrow thingy next to the title on mobile apps. Duly noted.
And Jingles is sitting there so patiently, because he knows the habit now. Don't you lick none of that stuff. He knows the habit now that at the end of the video, he's waiting to come up on his little table. Now he's beginning to think this is his spot. Yeah, he's beginning to think this is his spot. Oh, let's pick him up. So he came to say hello. We just ate a little while ago. He had a half a meatball made with ground turkey and a nice cup of veggies all mixed in, and the vitamins. And you know something? I think he's gained some weight. You know, I think you gained some weight. I think you did. So he wanted to say hi, and I know you guys wanted to say hi. Jingle Bells rocks, right? Because this is Jingle Bell time. At the end of the video, it's Jingle Bells, Jingle Bells, Jingle Bell time. Boop. Boop. All right, guys. Thank you for being together with me in this Jingle Bell time. And Jingles has allowed me to come into his little special time. And that's what we got. Catch you guys later. Bye-bye. Okay, you ready to go down? Okay, now you're back on your couch. And we gotta go over and turn the camera off manually because the phone is not operational. I would lose the focus. But this is Jingle Bell time now. Never mind about the camera.